Thokozani abogogo nabomkhulu. I'm Gogo Lerato. I'm Gogo Kanda Lembube. I'm Gogo Mapapela Pezulu. This is Mkulu's setup, and okay, it's different, but it's nice, and I think it resonates so much with the teaching that I'll be doing today. So we are doing kereke Sephiri continued, and last week we were testing the waters, and it was a great response from the most of you guys. I know a lot of you guys were nervous, or let me not actually discuss what is Sephiri, and like I said last week, I hope that I did it justice. Some of you, like I'm saying, were very concerned, but the reason why I'm teaching about this is, like I said even before I started, a lot of people that are supposed to go to Israel, they don't know it. They don't know it. And unfortunately, their guides will give them hints and clues. And okay, I'm going to explain why, even when they go in Shola, they'll be given like a slightly different interpretation of their dreams, and even the gift, and why it's so difficult to identify it. So I hope today we're going to finish up to go another week at Lewereba straight, but we'll see if today we'll be able to cover all the readings. Okay, let me balance. Arapeling Ntatar nama hodimo mpitso la le haletso ho tle muso ha o thato etsa lefatsheng jalo ka etswa le hodimo o re feka jeno ba ba o le kaneng ba tsa le le mo re tshwara le melato rena jalo ka re tshwara ba re sitelwa o se re se mo le komerulane ho ye mo be bane muso kwa ha le matla le khanya le khaletswe le ka sa feleng. Amen. Bitulanda tla morale moya ha hallang. Amen. O ile a nyediswa a furallwa ke batho ya ba motho wa mahlomola ya tsebang mahloko a tshwana le eo batho ba tshabang le ho motadima. O ile a nyediswa ra se ke ra monatsa. Amen. Morena o bua tjena le ile la rekiswa ntle ho tjhelete le tlabe le lopollwe ntle ho tjhelete. Amen. Bitulanda tla morale le moya hallang. Amen. Bahlorisi ba bolotsana ba atamela bona ba hole le molao wa hao. Wena morena o haufi, mme melao ya hao ke ya nnete. Gale ke tsebile hore ditemoso tsa hao o di tiisitse e be tsa mehla yohle. Amen. Ba rata molao wa hao, ba na le kgotso e phethehileng, ha hona se ka ba kgopang. Morena ke lebeletse hore o mpolose, ke tle ke phethe melao ya hao, ke latela ditemoso tsa hao, ke di rata haholo. Amen. Amen. Okay, so these are beautiful scriptures. The one scripture, the first one that I read, I don't know it off by heart, but I'm going to tell you guys. This should definitely be I think it's Isaiah 53. And it's also very relevant to Israel and what we're talking about. But first, I think what I want to do, I want to talk about why some spirit guides don't want Israel. I think let's start there today. Why some people should not go. So a few years ago, sure, my chi wants to drop me. A few years ago, I had a prophet at my salon, and the salon was basically falling apart, right? I felt it was something that Badimo had given me to do. I'd gone there, and now my salon, I came a prophet. It was just the weirdest thing. Kabitamo profeta o atleko salonong into my ndumba to come and hlola me and why is the ndumba the only place making money and the salon is not making money. And I guess prophetically he picked it up, right? When he walked into my ndumba, I remember that man, Omo Profeta, said to me, it is not proper for you to have ndumba kamusalunu. You are not supposed to. Badimu ababatle le rata and ababatle batu abangata, right? Which is typically what we know Kamandao. You know, they don't like chaos, abarate in and out, right? And you know, obviously I rolled my eyes. Anyway. But why? I mean, I must bring it here. And initially he said to me, no, you're not supposed to have ndumba kamukharaga saluni. It's unspiritual, let's call it that. And it was also around about the time that I had my beads on and skinny jean crop top. You know, it was a crazy time. It was a time of a lot of shifting around of things. So Mola, I believe he picked it up prophetically for Israel. And he said to me, Israel is not a spiritual gift. So he was sitting me down and trying to make me understand why my salon is falling apart. And he said to me, Israel is not a gift. It's not a naturally occurring gift. Okay? And Abarakonna, Israel is like magic. It's literally like Boloi. I mean, I felt really offended. I mean, I've been having a long journey with Israel. Abarakonna no Boloi. It's like a Khoralla Bungaga. I was like, okay. So I'm listening to him. And then he started to tell me, you know, how did I come to Israel? No, my granny took me because I was sick and I was mentally unstable. And to sort of getting myself together. And one thing about, well, even your disease was like a made-up illness. Now I'm starting to get interested. You know, I'm like, what? I don't know, your disease is a made-up illness. When you are not Mutua wa Israel, you were never meant to go there. It's not an actual form of healing. It's like sislamus, basically. Israeli maslamus, which are like basically magicians. Okay. And then he told me something very interesting. And I kind of resonated with it in a crazy way. So he said to me, your mom, go Israel? And I said, yeah. And he said to me, the day that your mother dies, you must be careful, because if she dies in the Elemutua Israeli, then moya wa gage o ka se mo roballe. And I was like, how does that work? About it, you know, even after your mother dies, she is going to be seen in her house, walking around. And she's going to be seen walking around, even possibly naked. I was like, whoa. That is very interesting. So he was engaging me, right? Because I have been go Israel many years, and I stopped going there, like I explained last week. But more importantly, when my first gobela arrived, bungoma, the first thing that she said was, Israel wants Israel. And even on my journey after I'd left that particular mpande, and I was still trying to find myself, I had an entire year where I didn't have amabai, where I didn't have any beads, where I didn't even know if I was coming or going, but I was not allowed to rwala ditlhako. I was not allowed to rwala ditlhako, but I didn't have my bai. So I was at a place where I'm in between twasa now, and I don't know to who because I don't have beads, and not being because I'm walking around in my clothes. So it was incredibly frustrating for me. My clothing at that time, nakwekesina mabai. Badimu specifically said to me, don't wear black clothes. We want you in white clothes everywhere. So what happened with me was that in that year, I started to slowly go back to my life. So typically, maybe once a month, I'd go and go shisa nyama. Except kitamakia fish shisa nyama without shoes, right? And I would go to these places and basically sit in my car for the afternoon, and when it gets late, I must go home. So mulao wa lefetlo, mulao that I was given at my Kobela's house, for the first time, it looked like Badimu wanted to continue, wanted me to continue kamulao, or except now I had no clothing, right? I just want to get to the point because we've got a lot of things to talk about, Israel. And after, like I said last week, a good Samaritan said to me, Israel. After that, musebeti wako Israeli that I went to, that is when my bungoma, my nguni, became active, literally a week later. And my prophetic gift became active, literally a week later. It's like after I did musebeti wa Israeli, things opened up. This spirituality opened up. And in many ways, it gave me an understanding, now, during the time that I was no longer but I was still Badimus Letwasa, I was not getting dreams showing me what I should wear. I was not getting dreams telling me anything, actually. Now, in a way, because people knew, well, I mean, so people would still come, give up prophetela and continue gadibata as usual, right? But that also dried up. But they stopped coming. I guess because we didn't have the beats, and Lorna, we were relieved because now we didn't know what to do. But something interesting happened shortly before I was told Israel. In that year as well, that was the first time I actually said to Nkulu, Israel in a bag of bones. I had never heard of such. And it was so funny that every time I would throw my bones for Ditlhatlhobo, Israel would come up in one way or another. So in actual fact, that year, I did not have the authority to bereka batho ba Israel, but I was bereking batho ba Israel through the Taula. So that's how I got to work batho for free, basically, because I didn't know how to charge. I didn't know how you charge for Israel, right? It's just the church. And after I had this musibeti, then my things opened up. So when this prophet said to me that Israel is not a proper gift, it's like magic, I found it really hard to believe, because had I not been there, then there would not be prophecy. And that was the first question I asked him. And he said to me, yes, umo profeta ibile unale neo ya go ya bongaka e o ifileng ke badimo ba gago. And I said, but why did they never release it or open it until Kiako Israel? Okay, we ended up not having a proper answer for that. But after he left that night, mo profeta in the salon, my gogos, when I was wondering, is she going to be loitering around and her spirit will be trapped in a place between heaven and earth? The answer that they gave me was the dreams that I had been having the previous year. But the answer that they gave me also was a biblical text. When I asked them, they said to me, what people would be seeing your mother doing, and it will not be Kostrating, it will be in her house. When you guys see your mom, the analogy or the Bible story for that is the transfiguration of Jesus Christ on the mountain. I was like, oh. Lights went on. The word transfiguration means literally the changing of the face, the changing of an image of someone. Now, what is so important about that? I had never looked at that Bible story. And Leona, that Bible story, it just talks about that. What it told me now was the beginning of my understanding that the changing of faces and even the becoming of faces, tabadimu, in my dreams was only a transfiguration, and that the idea of a dlozi that I had always imagined could have very well been only one person. I know what I'm saying is complicated, I know. So the year before, Israel, my bayis, my traditional cloths, my traditional cloths, the definition of my gift, and even when I got my name, I dreamt of my living grandmother. So in actual fact, Muprofeta had just given me an answer. How is it possible to twasa a living person? How is it possible to twasa a living person? Through the transfiguration. The image of my grandmother, in the dream, is actually this tunywa in her. Now, what that also said now is that as Xhosa people have said and spoken about itonga, there is such a thing. I may be twassing my grandmother because ke mona ka matlo in my dreams, but in actual fact, my spirit guides could be taking on her image. My true spirit guide could be transfigurating into her, right? And that also told me two things. This gift is coming from her. It is coming from her. But there is another spiritual entity, another energy, right? It could have been her gift. It could have been her dlozi. It could have been her Ndao spirit. There are other spirits coming up in the image of her. And that, after I had that story, I was shocked. I got to understand that in actual fact, the moment you see speak as it's a link two-toned, it is actually the combination of two energies, or two dlozis, or mandau I2. And they could be coming as one person, but actually it's two separate energies. This is the sun cloth. Sun Godra. This is Mudimu Wako Dinukani. This is Mzayon. This is an ancestral person. The person Gamo Green is more ancestral. The person Gamo is more Stunya prophetic. Visions. So how is it that I'm getting two almost separate gifts? Most speaking, say one. It's two of my spirit guides that have chosen to sort of pair up to say, my efforts and your efforts come together. The Pegasus are the two-tone baholo. Kidi collaborations. These are collaborations. And you can have what Badimo will do is then they will send one person to go. So actually, we can say, when you look at Israel, you are looking at Mandau. I only spoke about this last week. It's only Balotzi, and only Mandau spirits. And that is why they can transfigurate into the image of anyone. So, Kitwasa Mang asked me, Kitwasa, my living grandmother. And not so long ago, I shared on one of my videos that after all of this, Zako Israeli and Lisopostola, after all of this twassing, my mother, my biological mother, she came and told me she was always the Mundau behind it all. How? Never dreamt of my mother, not once. Okay, maybe once. When I was doing still Bungoma. Only once. And every other time when my mother has come in my dreams, she asks me questions. She's never given me a cloth. So my grandmother, Opilang, is the transfigurated version. Yamanda wa mangatangata. Could be her gift, could be my mother's gift actually. And that's when I understood, or no, why would they say Israeli kibului? Right. Now, for those by alona don't want you, Israel, here's why they wouldn't want you. Firstly, like I said, Kase Profeta, according to that Profeta, Israel now is a combination of a lot of Mandau. So what does that mean? There isn't a proper entity. There isn't a proper Lozi. Israel can actually, by definition, summon Madlozi as far as 10 generations back. And those Lozis don't give you their names because they come as Linyeloi and they just give you Kubo. So that is where now the spirit of the person, the ancestry that you're getting, it no longer matters now. It's either going to be endowed spirit or a Mlozi. That's it. They only give you Kubo, and the color is what now starts to teach you. Right? Israel, I believe, is also the foundation of candle readings, numerology, tarot cards, and that. Why? Because tarot cards, you look at them, I mean, they are not primarily African. Crystals are not primarily African, right? So now that's where you start to get an introduction of Mandau, Amachayana ko Israeli. That's where you get an introduction of you're German, you're French, you're Roman Catholic, Mandau in Israel. And what they do, because they don't come as themselves, right? They come under the guise of Linyeloi or under the veil of a cloth. That is why it is Piri. It's not about the identity of the Lozi. It is about what the Lozi can present to you. It is a lesson. So, Matlozi Achakoko Israeli, they start to become like ascended masters in ascension through you, with you, for you. That Israel, the concept of going to Israel is like really redefining the analogy that I always give of God differentiating itself into each of us. So the face, yeah, Sidi Museo becomes a mystery. You don't need to see the face. Right? I believe Israel is coming a lot, or rather it connects a lot with our Ifa, and your Ghanaian and even Nigerian forms of spiritual healing, right? Where I suppose maybe that's where the magic aspect could come from, right? Yeah, I suppose that's where the magic aspect would come from, right? The gods and goddesses, Yemoja and Oshun, we have now recently, in popular, African spirituality, we have started to summon them and to recognize them by name and what their attributes are. Can I tell you guys, if we were to properly study the traits, the abilities, the purpose of those gods and orishas, of the gods and the goddesses of the orishas, if we were to look at their traits and how they work, you would find elements of that for Israel. So by the time most people realized about Goddess Yemoja, Israel has been incorporating practices very close to the Orisha. I also believe that Israel is more for Batswana, Basotho, Bapedi. I don't know why, you know. Obviously, Mahlubi then would be bring it to Maxhosa. Some, it's not their primary belief system. However, I will say this: it is like a collaboration, a collective of Mandau coming through. Now, why would we need Israel today? If now, I mean, obviously, I said last week, the Witchcraft Act is the reason I believe Israel came into being. Why then? Because, well, you know, now we know we can just be Africans. Why then do we not just abolish it? Why do we not abolish it? Let me tell you guys why. It became the only movement, the only spiritual recognition of various cultures and various ways of healing. But it became so off the grid that so ridiculously off the grid that Madlozi, particularly Amandau, are hidden in the Bible. The secrecy behind it is finding our ancestry, finding our ancestry's instructions through the Bible, right? So people who had been coming, let's say from Wesleyan Church or Methodist or Roman Catholic or Kai, in as much as they would attend their churches during the day, but at their churches where they go would start now to filter into Israel. So Israel is like impande, right? Except it's a forever evolving impande. Can you imagine that? So when you knew yourself or you knew your father to be Matebula, the Matebulas, your ancestry, will show you Sephiri, Sakwa Matebula, through the church. And then your mother dies, and then she comes to you in a dream and tells you, no, actually, you're not Matebula, you're actually Makubetsi. By virtue of your mother telling you in your dream, which is what we have associated with the prophet, what your mother does in that dream is opens a second door to your spirituality, for Israel. And by virtue of declaration, she now goes and opens the ancestry for you. Except when that ancestry comes, it's like a particular garment. They're not even going to tell you. You're going to figure it out once you've got the garment. The garment will give you a different set of dreams, a different set of perspective, right? So you learn to see many different perspectives of your lineage coming from all sides of life. As I said last week, Israel is also the only place where you can sort of combine Manyeloi or the Badimu from both your mother and your father's side, whether your parents were married or not. So Israel is Sephiri because the Sephiri aspect is forever evolving, forever rotating, forever becoming. It is like a journey of you becoming whatever that Badimu Bachaho have chosen for you. And the only way to do that is by allowing or including as many Ndao spirits. Different Ndao spirits with different strength and different strengths now would give you that perspective. So in actual fact, Israel allows you to be the true form of who you are from both an ancestral place and also from a spiritual place. You become a hybrid. By the time you are at whatever level, you become a hybrid of who you thought you were. And if you think about it, even from the Bible, that is what forces you into what the Bible calls the Christ mentality. That's what forces you to go into the Christ mentality, because now outside in their Christ mentality. The Christ mentality is to renew your mind, your spirit all the time, to have a redefinition of who your spirit guides are, of who your dlozi is. So in actual fact, the cloths that you guys see in my ndumba, these cloths are the African or the ancestral expression for the spirits that I have acquired mainly from Israel. Okay. So if Badimo Bakaho don't want you to go there, it is probably because now I will say, if your mother, your father, clean bloodlines, I feel also live to Babu Khosi, the ancestry would not really want them to go there, right? Unless if Ilebo Khosi it was supposed to be theirs, and well, things happened. Then you would go to Israel to go and find out your true roots, right? From a spiritual place. In this world, another reason why I feel Israel has stayed on for so long is not only because they've managed to, guys, Israel is off the grid in another way. There isn't only ever one interpretation of anything. And back to Tabayabu hype, you becoming a hybrid of what your spirit guides and your ancestors and Itonga Lako and, all of these spirits, you become a combination of all of them. But I feel also, but Tababu Hosia, like I said, they wouldn't need necessarily to go unless if there were issues in their bloodlines and that. Another big reason why I think Israel, besides the fact that it primarily became, by the way, the only real place where people with ancestral Ubungoma spirits could go, right? Because the churches, like kereke, while they, each church has its own linyeloi, and its own linyeloi has got its own way of doing things. So Israel, like I said, it's a mixture, and they could continue to become ba profeta leading at once, right? But overall, let me tell you guys, when I observe Israel now, one of the biggest reasons why I feel it has thrived for so long and it will continue to thrive into the future is that Israel, for the first time, you see an organization that is socially, economically, and environmentally conscious. I believe Israel is the proof that our elders and our ancestors were not a bunch of barbarians. In Israel, we learn basic lessons like moving money with thinners, like learning to lift each other's businesses. The concept ya gore ha ona le manyeloi, they don't want you gore o berekele lekgowa. That was a concept that I feel originated from Israel. And that is why you see other churches, like I said last week, sort of either maybe coming from it or coming into it, and I don't think it would make a difference. Manyelui are saying now such concepts where you need to empower yourself. You see elements of that. Let me give you let me give a very good example. In general, when we go for Israel, if you need a garment, you have it sewn by a person who goes there. Your garment is not just made by any Tom and Harry. So the garment itself, by virtue of having somebody who is within our organization being sewn, A, uplifts linyeloi la that person, be it financially, spiritually even, right? And B, it may not necessarily require you uti ipagamiswe. it's already been touched by a holy person. A lot of sort of, you know, some of, not even rules, a lot of things in there are socially responsible and economically responsible issues that are being addressed there, right? Something as simple as having an orphanage, something as simple as, you know, bringing people together. It's very important in Israel. And if you think about it, the mere fact is Sephiri, and you can only go by somebody taking you there, it means that someone has seen you struggle. Someone has seen you, and this person has taken it upon themselves to care for you and look out for you. So it is really like you are your brother's keeper, right? And I think for me personally, as Gogo Lerato, as Lerato, I have learned so much about my purpose fighting through Israel, because for the first time being there, who I am and my aspirations in life are not just limited to me, right? I was so shocked when I first went. There was a lady got taxi rank from where I went to school. And that lady, every day after school, you know, she would just chat up with me and whatever, and we would just talk and whatnot. That woman, I really don't know how my connection with her began. And the first year that I went to Israel, I decided to go communicating with my mom. And boom, that woman was there. And I was like, I knew it. You were a guardian angel to me. And the pride with which that woman sold the apoleta was a lesson that I only got to learn much, much later. It's a lesson that I got to learn in my own salon, in my own business, right? Where now, according to Linyeloi Lateng, the freedom to work, now you no longer work for, you don't live to work, now you work to live. And you can bust your sweat and udule go ranking and make your living. So we are no longer required. Israel, I feel, promotes that you are no longer required because you could use whatever means to be able to hustle, right? So Kimatata and Asimatata. But okay, I think time is almost up. My screen is so I'm sure some of you guys saw my dream interpretation last week. So if only mutwa Israel or Israel and you don't know, how do you recognize it? Most of the time, Nyeluila Apostole, Nyeluila St. John, Manyelua di kereke that we know, if libereka moena, then it sort of sees Israel also as witchcraft. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to explain it, right? So the only analogy I can give is with me. In my Ndumba now, I can't have Dulotza Israel. I don't pray, right? Dulotza Israel. But whenever people come to my house, and these are people, Baba Naling, Israel Manyoloi, then color black comes up a lot. And that's how I got to realize that people will be dreaming of Amapai, Amnyama a lot. Some of them, they will dream of the red line cloth. I don't know why it's so popular there. But black cloths, being dressed in black. You know, you meet ba profeta ba motshegare who will sort of say to you, go and buy a black and white cloth, or go and buy a black cloth. I said last week you will dream of people baba tsamayang naked, or you would be naked. Dreaming of dingaka, traditional healers inside your house. So it could be mukete, hoshapwas gupu, hwagitiwa inside the house. But the house normally is not is not visible. In your dream, it would look like 3-4 a.m. Right? Sure, there's a variety. Dreaming of things happening in the kitchen at night. Because apparently Israeli used to be called kitchening back in the day. I don't know if it's because my kitchening thing, I don't know, or the peasants, right? Okay, okay, I mean that could also be a prophetic dream. But also I know water running in the house, inside the house, sometimes can be one of the symbols that you dream of Israeli. It's normally just very funny things, you know, things that you would wonder, why is you know, why would I dream of this? Dreaming of things happening behind a curtain. So in your dream, you would typically be, let's say, in your bedroom or wherever, in the lounge, and then you must move to another part of the house or the room, and there's a divider, a room divider, a curtain. Dreaming of being under a blanket, kamuntung or kontle. I think you guys have seen a few of my interpretations. So a lot of these dreams, you would actually have to be Mutwa Israel. Once you're on the inside, the context of the dreams, you can get it, you can understand. But what is happening now is that most of us, as a porofeto, Israel starts to help to porofeta itself, right? So back to where you find people mutu abonsiwa duku or speaker says black. What that means is that pikaseo sisisweu, but it looks black in the dream because right. Another reason why people babaling Israel they would look like abangoma is because linyelula thing, it mainly functions from midnight until mat. Right? So you waking up upahla kampepo at 3 a.m. it's one of the surefire ways, but there would be other dreams that would sort of indicate that. Right? What happened with me was that every morning I would dream of my child wearing white clothes to come and wake me up. But it was mainly my child just coming wearing white clothes and saying, Mama, wake up at 3 in the morning, almost every morning. So that told me that it's not really, it's like I'm waking up, but in actual fact, it's like something else going on because I would need to pray after doing my shechling, and I would need to read my Bible. And I really did not understand why, but I see that it was that time. You know, it was Linyelula Israeli disguised. Sometimes it does that because Kispiri, remember? So it will give you clues. Some people dream of being under the sea, under the water, right? I also believe it's also one of the reasons why we've got such few people that go in Twasa underwater. Going to Israel really eliminates that, because now if Unadimandau and Nikazi only functional, then there would be no need for you to go and be underwater, you know? So yeah, no guys, like it's crazy. It's other things. Like I'm saying, you could learn numerology and astrology even. Recently, I'm trying to find out from my spirit guides if I can start to do readings with just normal cards, not even tarot cards, just normal cards. says about Queen Jack, whatever. And I feel like it would be Israel that would actually help me to do that, because it is so much of the grid, right? It is so much off the grid. I can't say it. It is also the only way that I know where a combination of ancestral and prophetic ways of healing can be combined and can align, right? Without sort of clashing with each other. But I know Ngesinguni as well. It can be done. I know it can be done. So I suppose Israel would be maybe the more churchy way. Another thing that I want to say is that when you are told ungaka, ibilomo prophet, you will never be those things at the same time, at the same level, concurrently, at any point. So sometimes we are Israel. Let's say for me, I'm a prophet now. Mainly, I'm a prophet. In my day work, so go Israel, what I do is I sort of align my ancestral or Obungoma spirits into Israel. So when I'm there, a lot of more your deep earth colors come up from there. Some people give bangoma, and that's the gift that they've been given primarily to work with, but to work any in that, you know, because now obviously if we were just dingakata Israel only, we would only be able to heal people who go to Israel, right? Which defeats the point, yabungak. But if let's say you are Mkoma and you work with Beraka Ditaola, Beraka Setsu, then go Israel would also be the place where you can now ophakamisa the other side of who you are. Another thing that I've seen is that some ancestors, they don't want one interpretation of their gift. Some ancestors don't want one interpretation. Here's a good example. If you had a gogo or a koko who was a traditional healer, she might give you seporofito as the visible gift, let's call it that, or let's call it the waking gift, that you will go and connect with people. Why would she do that? It's because she has sort of spent her traditional healing gift, and now that she's died, converting that gift and expressing it into superofito for her might be a new experience, and not necessarily because abati, you know, or that is something. It's not because right? So she could convert that gift that she was practicing in her waking life, maybe into a complementary gift, right? Yin yang. Okay, my hands are going all over. But when that same Coco, who was a traditional healer, she can give you that gift, yes, prophet. But when you take her to Israel, sometimes what she would choose to do now is go back and sort of reminisce on the ancestral gift that she had. Except now this ancestral gift, we have a speaker, right? And then this way, I believe that's where we would get things like tarot cards and crystals. Now, what you are allowing her to do through Israeli is to sort of convert the medium with which she healed into an alternate or another source, which is very important. So that glozy, because now it's the Ndau aspect of your Coco's gift that starts to function independent of, you know, a structure, then it can choose a different expression. And I always think to myself, it is wonderful. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think for our spirit guides to do that. So they can literally, through Israel, have their cake and eat it. All right. Ganini, though, what they will do is that Abu Kokobetu, or, you know, they would then take Iskwama Sabo and break it up apart upon their children. But that's a conversation for another day. For Sporofito and Iskwama, that is been divided into more than just one host. Back really to the Mdao aspect. You're right. Right? So sometimes you could all be trusting, you could be trusting the same person or aspects of the same person, or the same person in collaboration with other people. That's mostly how it works when you've got a spiritual gift, and that person could be choosing to have 2 to 3 dynamics that are completely different. But often what I've seen, Abangoma, when they come over here for readings and to help, and they bring a sibling, sometimes it's that sibling that has got a gift but doesn't want to trust her that is required for Israel. And then, oh, Amgoma, it's just totally crazy. So I think I'm done with this. I hope I've done it justice. I hope I've done it justice. I think today I gave a lot more context for those that are still trying to search for Israel. Yeah, there's one more element that I want to teach about. I think, yeah, Israel, but I'm going to do it at a much later stage. I don't think it's going to really properly fit in with Israel. I think I need to do some background work on that. So, Thokozani Abokoko Nabomkulu, have a wonderful Wednesday. Yeah, let's keep the faith. Let's keep on going. It's not Buloi. It's not Buloi, but it's the first sign, I feel. It's not the first. It's one of the signs that show us that Africans, we are highly intelligent beings. Highly intelligent beings. And I don't know. I don't know. I hope to do a lesson, hopefully next week, on Mundau, but it's going to be a different angle. Something has been happening to me recently. Whenever I dream for other people, or I dream of other people, I no longer see visions or pictures of people. I will just know, or it's a particular person. But the voice of the Ndao spirit, because that spirit lets me know that I'm the Mundao of. The voice of that Ndao spirit always sounds like the voice of my Ndao spirit. So I hope we're going to talk about that next week. In isolation now, and not even just and I'm going to hopefully provoke you guys next week. So Thokozani, let me get off my chair and switch it off. Have a great evening, Togos.